Washington Post, my colleague at NBC News. He is also the host of Washington Week in Review. I have a confession, Bob. I did not see it Friday. I was chasing a 13-month-old. And I don't know if the Costa seniors are blessed with a grandchild yet, but when you have one and they're not asleep on Friday at 7 o'clock, it's a bad thing. And so I don't know what happened. I want to know if the roundtable covered the Israeli UAE deal, which I think is probably one of the most significant diplomatic achievements of the last 25 years.
We did cover it, and we discussed it mostly in context of the campaign because the timing is everything. There's the significance of the deal itself and the meaning of the deal in terms of Middle Eastern peace, but it comes as President Trump is running against a Democrat who is known for foreign policy, has a foreign policy worldview that is different than the president's own. And so this is now a hot campaign issue. Where would Biden go with the Middle East? What would be different? And President Trump now is showing he has his own accomplishment in his view to compete with whatever Biden is offering on that front.
Did you speculate, or did anyone on the panel speculate about more dominoes falling? There is a hope that Bahrain, Oman, Morocco, maybe even the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia follow suit. I think that last one is a bit of a reach in this short period of time. But did anyone on the panel speak to what comes next?
Well, a lot of it depends on what Jared Kushner is able to do with Mike Pompeo and how they've arranged the chess pieces and relationships out in that region. Saudi Arabia, though, seems to be the place where people have, like you, have the most reservations about whether they'll come on board with anything at this point, this close to an American election.
I agree. Now, I do know one thing. Joe Biden announced applause. Ben Rhodes, former National Security Advisor, Deputy Assistant, announced criticism. Robert O'Brien on Meet the Press yesterday took a shot at him by name, as did Mike Pompeo on his personal account, as being the only person besides the Ayatollah Khamenei who was against the deal. That's getting tractored on national television. I am curious, do you still think that the JCPOA, which had been a talking point for Joe Biden, is going to remain a talking point? Because I don't think you get the UAE and the rest of the Arab states into a deal that is going to be in the shadow of the JCPOA. I don't think even if Biden wins, he can go back to that deal.
I don't want to speculate about what Biden's going to say, but I will. It's clear talking to top Democrats that they want to protect the integrity of the JCPOA deal, but the idea of actually reviving it in every way, at this point, things change, and I think they're going to confront if Biden wins whatever the foreign policy reality is.
All right. Now, Robert, I want to switch up. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, I have Madeleine Westerhout. I've known Madeleine literally since she was in high school, since she is from Irvine, California, where I used to live. And so I was always happy for her, a little bit surprised that a kid from Irvine would end up in the Oval Office. What do you think happened to her? Did someone break the rules regarding her?
I haven't read the book. She was close to President Trump. She's someone who, in her own book, I'm told, she writes about how she initially, on election night 2016, was somewhat stunned by President Trump's victory, which was one of those people in Reince Priebus' circle in the Republican National Committee who was not really sure how this would all play out and was nervous perhaps about the presidency. But she came to grow close to President Trump. And her book's called Off the Record because she made comments about President Trump in a private setting with reporters that was later dripped out of into public view. She apologized for those comments. She lost her job, but she's still in the president's good graces. Just talked about her the other day with a source because she's seen as someone who tried her best despite that situation.
I'm not sure. When I read the book, I know who the suspects are. I don't want to name them because she did not name with certainty who the suspects are. But Mick Mulvaney fired her. I'm not sure the president was well served by that decision because Madeleine is a loyalist and this book is a loyalist book, and so it doesn't get quite the same press. But Robert, what are the rules for Bob Costa? I know what the rules are for Hugh Hewitt. If someone tells me something is off the record, I make sure in any subsequent conversation about it, I don't mention who told me something. I say I was told in an off-the-record setting that X, Y, and Z happened. In fact, I was told in an off-the-record setting on Thursday about the Israeli UAE deal in no uncertain terms that the timing was absolutely up in the air because Mike Pompeo would have been loved to have been there. He had a long scheduled a trip to the Central European states to pursue peace there, and therefore wasn't there because it came together at the last minute. But I'm not going to tell you who told me that. What is this rule set for people out there? You've been doing this a long time. What's the rule set about off the record?
So put aside the Madeleine Westerhout incident. I don't know the details of that. We'll prefer not to speculate. But to answer your question, generally speaking, and there are always nuances here because it's not like it's a legal matter, it's reporting. But generally speaking, if someone uses the phrase off the record, that is the most extreme kind of statement in terms of barring information from being public. That means the meeting itself, the conversation itself, details from the conversation, the name of the person speaking, all are not able to be revealed or attributed, and the information that is being shared cannot be used to guide reporting or find its way into any story. The next level is the level a lot of sensitive reporting is done, which is deep background. That's 1 inch above off the record, which means the content and information can be used, but it can't be attributed to the person who's telling you, often because they're not allowed to speak publicly. But you are allowed to use the morsel of information if you can corroborate it fully. And then after deep background, you have background, which means I can say if I was talking to you on background, Hugh, I could say a well-known and respected conservative commentator told me, but not use your name. You can use a descriptor on background often to talk about a White House official, a conservative writer, and then on the records after that.
And I got to tell people how it works in practice. I did a trip with the working White House press, of which Robert is one of them, with John Bolton a year and 4 months ago. And I learned that you go up and you have an off-the-record setting. You all jointly transcribe it. Then you send up to his press aides the part you would like to attribute to John Bolton, and they either give you a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And if they give you a thumbs down, you don't use it, Robert, right?
That's correct.
It's a funny system, and unless you're a working beat reporter in the White House, you don't learn the rules very well.
Though, Hugh, that it's very unusual. It's only sometimes on those pooling trips where you have to get approval for quotes like that if something's off the record. Usually it's much more of a fluid negotiation. If something's off the record, you'll say to a source, hey, that's not sensitive. Put that on background at the least.
Yeah.
And then they'll say deep background.
Yep, that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what. But now I also want to make clear, Stuart Spencer, great man of California politics, once said, anything said in a restaurant is intended to be printed, meaning that if you happen to be sitting next to somebody who's high up and you start talking policy, you have no beef if somebody quotes you in the newspaper. Am I right, Robert Costa?
That if you're in a public space, I mean, there's different reporters have different styles of not wanting to eavesdrop necessarily, but anything's fair game if it's in a public space. I mean, I don't go out of my way to sneak. I don't sneak around. That's just not my style. But if I'm going to quote you, you're going to know I'm quoting you.
Now, last question, Robert. I have been going to conventions since 2000. I don't know when your first convention is. When's your first convention?
2000. I snuck into the Philadelphia convention.
Oh, did you really? That's funny. It's a hole in the soul of a political reporter not to go to the conventions. What are you going to do this week? I mean, it's just not a convention. It's a bunch of videotapes.
Wallow in my depression about not being at a convention. I mean, I think about your city, Cleveland, how much fun I had in 2016 and 2012 in Charlotte with the Democrats. All these conventions going back over a decade, and it's just terrible, Hugh. I mean, this is the time where I get to see Hugh Hewitt in person and remember he's a human being, not just a voice.
And it's the time you see Sarah Palin raise the roof in Minneapolis or a young state senator from Illinois take the roof off the Fleet Center. Yeah, or Bill Clinton going on. I didn't see the Bill Clinton 1988 speech, but I watched it on TV. That's the big Washington Week in Review will have to be our substitute this week. You're the methadone of convention week. So Robert Costa, we'll see you on Friday night, Washington Week in Review. Don't go anywhere, America.